Yeah, we have come towards the last session, so we'll quickly see what was planned for first session. Introduction to programming, what do you mean by programming, and basics of programming in C. Tokens we covered, and then conversions, and then input-output operations we have seen with printf and scanf, and also getters we have seen. Why do we use them? And then in the second week, we had gone for branching constructs. So all the different branching constructs we have seen, and then how do we use it, and when do we have to, how do we select using a branch construct, what happens, and what's the difference between these constructs. So these things we have covered in the second week. In the third week, we have gone for looping constructs and unconditional control constructs. So we have seen when do we have to use event controlled or counter controlled loops, or what do you mean by entry controlled and exit controlled loops? How do we decide when to be using which kind of loop, and what is the use of break, continue, and go to, and also the disadvantages of using go to. So all these kinds of programming techniques we have actually gone through in the week 3. So coming to week 4, where a couple of things I thought I'll touch at a high level, because as you see, the topic here is data structures. It's not so simple to be covered, but let me give a glimpse of what is it. What do you mean by data structure? You need to be knowing how do we organize the data, how do we keep a data, where do we keep it, and how do we keep it, and we have to keep it in such a way that it's easily accessible for further operations. So that is what is collectively told as data structures. How do you organize the data in such a way that further accessing it and using it will be easier? And there are different kinds of data structures. When we say, there are primitive data types which we have seen: integer, floating type, character, boolean we have. So all these are primitive data types: int, float, long int, and all those things are the variations of primitive types. We also have some derived types like string, and then we also have enumerations and all those things which are user defined types. So there are different kinds of data structures, and as it's suitable for our application, we go for designing a particular structure for storing our data, so that accessing that data and using it will be easier for our application. So if a user writes a data structure for his particular kind of application, how it has to suit his application, we call it as user defined data structure. However, all these user defined and derived data structure have to be derived or have to be having these basic primitive types like integer, floating types, characters, and all those things. So from these only we get into the high level data structures. Quickly, I'll go for sharing the IDE so that we can see the data structure and the usages. For example, if I tell basic, if I have to store a number, I'll be using an integer type if I have to store an integer number. So if I write int num is equal to 9. So if I written like this, you need to be knowing that whenever my compiler sees this particular line, int num9, it's going to decide many things. One is it should know how much space of memory is required for this particular variable. Since we are talking about C, when we are telling about the theoretical part, we take integer as 2 bytes. But when we tell about nowadays computers, it's either 32-bit or 64-bit operating system. So usually the size, minimum size is 4 bytes. That's why integer are having 4 bytes. But when we learn in textbooks, why? Because when C was developed, it was with respect to 16-bit architectures what we followed. That's why int is given as 2 bytes. But all the systems which you're using in your laboratories or which you're having at your home nowadays are minimum 32 or 64-bit architecture, where the minimum size of the word length in your computer memory is actually 4 bytes. So you can see integer as 4 bytes. So now in the system, since the server is having the same architecture of 32-bit processor or 64-bit processor, you have integer as 4 bytes. So what happens when I write integer is, my operating system knows that, okay, there is a person called num who wants 4 bytes of room, who wants 4 bytes of room. So in the 4 bytes of room, you can store whatever value you want. That is what has been assigned here. So the 9 is given to the variable num. That's what we say in the statement wise. But implicitly what's happening, your computer is going to reserve 4 bytes. And to that 4 bytes, it's going to give a name. And that name is num. The name is num. So you should be knowing what is num. Num is just a name given to memory location. That's what we call it as variables. And to that memory location, you can also have a value. So your 9 is the value. And each what is seen here is your value and name. But one more hidden thing is there, which we usually don't see, which is handled by your operating system. That's called as address, which we don't usually see here, right? Which is not shown in the front end, whatever you see, but it's a back end, it's been handled here. So everything in computer is with respect to address. But since we have to use a high level language like C, we don't encounter programming with address. We encounter programming with the names for those address and the values, because working at address level is bit complex. In the older languages, you can see working at address level. In microprocessor language also, at some extent, we work at address level. It's a bit complex to working at address level. So that's why as we improved, the high level language reduced that complexity. So we are having the names for these addresses. So using these names, we are able to access the values. So that's what is how computer is working in behind. So when it says int num equal to 9, it reserves 4 bytes in computer memory, and it gives that address a name. What is the name of it? Num. That's what we call it as variable. Fine. So you usually call it as name, or you can also call it as variable name. And to that variable name, you can actually assign a value that gets stored in there. And back end, we are having address, which is actually taking care of all these things. If you see, we have given 4 bytes, but 4 bytes is not necessary for storing 9. 9 can be stored not in 4 bytes. It can be stored in 1 byte. 1 byte is actually 8 bits. Even 8 bits are not required for 9. Why? Because if I tell the binary value of 9, it's 1001. You can see here 4 bits are enough actually. And if you want to give sign in the front, so again another 4 bits you can add. So maximum 8 bits are enough. So maximum 8 bits are enough for storing 9. But how much I have given 4 bytes. So by default, how much is wastage? 3 bytes. 3 bytes is wastage. Why? Because for 9, it's just 1 byte is enough. Because the value of 9 in binary is 1001, which is to be stored in 4 bytes, you can see here. And if you have to indicate positive, we need to take an extra bit. But we don't have 5 bits. We need to be take in multiples of 2 power. So that's why we take it as 8 bits. So what happens with 8 bits is these 4 bytes of leading zeros indicates it's a positive sign for 9. I'm telling about one's magnitude signs. We'll not get into those complexity. How do we tell in one's magnitude or two's magnitude form? We'll just keep it very simple. For 9, 1 byte is enough. That is 8 bits. But I have assigned it 4 bytes. So 3 bytes are wastage. We call this as internal fragmentation. I'll write it as internal frag. It's called as internal fragmentation. Wastage of this 3 bytes. Fine. Okay. So what happens with integer num equal to 9? Only one number can be stored. Only one number can be stored. If I want to store 10 numbers of the same type, and if I have to store them under a single name, if I'm storing 10 numbers in different name, I can give n1, n2, n3. I can go on giving n4. I can go on giving like this, n5. So different names, 5 numbers I can store. In n1 I can store something, in n2 I can store something, in n3 I can store something, in n4 I can store something. But everyone is stored in different locations and under different names. So in the same way, I don't want to store them in different names. I want to come and place them under a single name. So what I can do is I can tell num, it's an array what we call, and how many I want? 5 I want. So this is a single line which I can actually use. This is called as an array. What do you mean by array? Array is actually collection of elements of similar type. Collection, and sequentially it's being given memory. What I mean by sequentially giving memory is the whole 5 elements will be stored under one name. What is the name of it? Num A. And that will be holding the starting address. Your num A will have the starting address. And totally 5 integer elements can be stored under this name of num a. Okay, how do I then access or how do I store the elements? So one of the procedure for storing the elements is let me write this comment line above. This is just a declaration of the array. If I have to give static initialization, for example, you can see here int num equal to 9. This is called static initialization. I'm not reading it from the keyboard through scanf or getters. Okay? I'm just reading it in the code itself. That is, I'm giving a static declaration. So in the same way, if you have to go for a static declaration of an array, it should be under a pair of braces. You can give the values. This is how you can give value. Maximum you can give 5 values because how many locations you have reserved for it? 5 locations. So what happens with this is your initial address num a will have an address and it will reserve 5 rooms. Each room is of 4 bytes. So listen here, be careful with this. There will be 5 slots. I'll tell, not rooms if it's confusing. 5 slots, each of 4 bytes. Who is telling I want 5 slots? You have given it in the size here. My size should be 5. And who is telling each of them should be of 4 bytes? Your integer keyword is telling each of them was of 4 bytes because I'm speaking with respect to 32-bit machine. So be careful. In your textbooks, it specifies 5 slots, each of 2 bytes because theoretically we tell integer takes 2 bytes. But when we are programming nowadays in 32-bit or 64-bit machine, I'm repeating this, it is 4 bytes for integer. But in textbooks, you find 2 bytes. So what is the total memory given for this num is 5 into 4. So total is 20 bytes will be assigned. Where will be the first number stored? Where will be this 1 stored? So what happens here is it will give a substitute. In num a of 0, it will store 1. And always remember your subscript. We call it as a subscript or an index. Your index of your data types or your sequences in computer science begins with 0. Your index always begins with 0. Those who are in second year, those who are learning data structure, your textbook, he is explaining index with 1. Be careful with that. He tells at the end that in real life, we don't use 0. That's why I was specifying 1. But in computer science, always your index begins with 0. So those who are in second year engineering, data structures, if you see your textbooks, he specified at all the places index is equal to 1. Index starts with 1. But be careful there. When you program it, all our sequences, your index begins with 0. So in the first location, what do we call? That is the 0th index, 1 will be stored. So in the same way, in the second location, that is your index is 1. In that, 2 will be stored. In the third location, that is index is 2, 3 will be stored. And in the fourth location, that is your index is 3, 4 will be stored. And your last, that is fifth location, that your index is 4, 5 will be stored. This is how the numbers will be stored. If you see carefully, num a is having the starting address. And in that starting address, how many rooms it has reserved? 5 slots, 5 rooms I can tell. So 5 slots it has reserved. In the first slot, which is given by index 0, your num1 is stored. In the second slot, that is index 1, your 2 is stored. In the third slot, 3 is stored. In the fourth slot, 4 is stored. And in the fifth slot, 5 is stored. So if anyone is giving the size as 5, the last index will be 4 and the starting index will be 0. That is always in the sequences of programming languages. Okay. Now, how do I use it or why do I go for data structures? You can do certain operations on data structures. Whenever I tell data structures, you can actually access the data structures. What you do after accessing, you can go for inserting values so that you can store, you can go for searching, you can go for sorting. So there are different kinds of operations you can actually do with your data structures, means with the data stored in particular format. And all of them does not allow sorting or searching. For example, if it is an individual element like 9, what is the use of searching, right? It's only one element. It's just finding it, is it present or not? It's not searching in a group of elements. But if it's a sequence, then you can have searching and sorting. For example, this by default is in the ascending order. But if I give like this, 15 here, it is not in the sorted order. So what you can do, you can take this particular array and you can sort it. Or if I tell find whether 7 is present in this array, that's called searching problem. So all these operations, there are many operations like this. All these operations can be performed in the data structures. And it's not necessary that all operations have to be performed on all data structures. Searching and sorting can only be performed on sequences, arrays. Fine. So that's a use of data structures. How do we actually store our data so that further accessing and processing it will be easier? And it depends on the type of application what we are using. So in this application, assume that I want a location which can store 5 numbers. So I have stored those 5 numbers here. Now, how do I actually print them? So if I write printf, if I want to print them 5 times, how do I do it? 5 numbers are there. I can do it individually, printing them 5 times. So I'll write a \t. And how do I write? Num a of 0. It will print my first element. So we'll run and we'll see. 11 should be getting printed now. Okay, I've missed somewhere some semicolon or something. What's the error? Okay, it's telling that I have an unused variable. So let me command it. In the spelling of
So printf spelling wrong.
Okay, yeah, I corrected. Thank you, okay, for correcting me. Printf is also wrong. There was a warning that I have declared a variable num which is not used, so I uncommented it, and there was a spelling mistake in printf. Okay, now you can see here I got 11. That's because the first element. If I want second element, what I have to do? So I can go here and paste it. I just have to change the index of it, because in second location my second element is stored. So if I run now, both 11 and 2 will be printed. You can see here 11 and 2 is printed. In the same way, if I want to go for third element, I just have to change the index. I have to tell the location as 2. If I run, you can see 11, 2, 3. In the same way, if I want other two, fourth and fifth location, so what I'll do, I'll just change the index here to 3. I'll change the index here to 4. You can see here, I'm getting the output. All the 5 elements I'm getting here, 11, 2, 3, 4, and 15. But if you see carefully, all the printfs are doing the same job, just the index is changing from 0 to 5. That means we are doing a repetitive task. Assume that there are 1,000 elements. How are we going to write 1,000 printf statements? It's foolish, right? Because computer programming is meant to reduce repeated tasks. We're using computer programming to reduce repeated tasks. Correct? So we write 1,000 times printf, it's of not a sense. It's not making sense. So what we need to do is we need to think of a logic where just the index is changing, but the entire printf remains same. So what I'm going to do is all these print statements, I can combine it for doing it in a for loop. That's what is the need of for loop. I'll start my index with 0. It is less than or equal to 4. Each time my index should increment by 1. And the same printf statement I'll take. But instead of writing a static index, I'll give I. So what happens is, first time my I is 0, it checks whether 0 less than or equal to 4, it's correct. So it gets inside, it prints num a of 0. It goes again to the branch statement, loop statement, increments I by 1. Increments I by 1, it prints the second element. I can give less than or equal to 4, or I can also give less than 5. It's one in the same. Usually we give less than 5, we don't use less than or equal to, but it's not wrong if you write less than or equal to also. Correct? It's just a relational operator which has to be manipulating the size of it. Okay, now let me comment this whole section. So what earlier your printf has done, 5 printf has done, now the single printf should be doing all those jobs with the help of a for loop. See, the same output I'm getting. I just replace the logic of doing a repeated task using the for loop. So this is what is the need of looping constructs in programming language. Any repetitive task is there, you can loop it. Fine. Okay, you have to be very careful with the index. Index always begins with 0. And if you're writing less than, you can give the size of it. Fine. So that's how it actually goes in here. Now I have given static declarations for array. This you have to be very careful here. What does num a plus I? What is this calculation computer is doing? What happens, if I write num a, it is having starting address. You need to be remembering. I'll write like this. Starting address. So starting address plus 0. First time it is 0, so I'm writing it. I'll write it outside. How the calculations is happening, I'll write it here. So starting address, num a initially has a starting address. So I'm writing, what do you mean by num a of 0? I'm writing for this, what do you mean by num a of 0? It is starting address plus 0. So anything if you add with 0, it is going to remain the starting address itself. So nothing is going to change. It is the starting address. Listen carefully to the next line, what I'm actually writing here. Num of 1, it is starting address plus 1. Here you have to be very careful. You're writing starting address plus 1 actually, but computer performs starting address plus 1 into 4. Implicitly it does this. This is your address of second location. Why is it doing 1 into 4? This is called pointer arithmetic or address arithmetic. The main advantages of C is with pointer. The disadvantage of C is pointer. They say, right, sometimes your strength only is weakness. So that's what is happening in C. Those who understand pointers, it's a powerful tool to work with. Those who don't understand pointers, it's very hard to crack the problem with pointers. That's only because of their arithmetic. I have written starting address plus 1, but computer implicitly performs starting address plus 1 into 4. Why is it multiplying into 4? What do you mean by num of 1 is go to the next location. But I have already said that each location takes how many bytes? 4 bytes. So someone should tell the computer, don't go to next byte, go to next location. That means after 4 bytes. That's why we are multiplying it with 4. And these calculations you are not doing, your compiler, your operating system is advising your compilers to do this particular job. If I write num of 1, it is starting address. Why starting address? Because num a always holds the starting address. So starting address plus 1. So that doesn't add 1 to your starting address. It adds 4 to your starting address. Why it adds 4 to your starting address? Why? Because each block of memory is of 4 bytes. Okay, coming to the next one. Your third location, that is num2. It is starting address plus 2. Okay, what it does is it does 2 into 4. That means what is the meaning of it? From the starting address, you move 8 locations. That's what it is telling. I'll show you in this writing. If I have a blank slide, I can show it here. Okay. Consider this is your memory. So what are the numbers? How many numbers I'm storing? I'm storing, assume 11. I'm storing it here. So let me increase the size of it. Okay. Your 11 is here. 2 is here. 3, 4, and then 15. These are the elements. So here your starting address. Assume that your starting address is 1000. Your next address will be 1004. Your next address will be 1008. The next address will be 1012. Then it will be 1016. This is how your computer works because each block is of 4 bytes. Why each block is of 4 bytes? Why? Because you have told in your programming that you want an integer, 5 rooms for integers. So it gives 5 rooms for integers. That's why each room is of size 4 bytes. And since it is a 32-bit architecture which we are speaking, minimum room size is 4 bytes. So what happens is first element is 1000 plus 1. Sorry, 1000 plus 0. So 1000 plus 0 is nothing but 1000 itself, as I've told, because it does 1000 plus 0 into 4, but 0 into 4 is 0 only. So it is 1000 itself. Next, what it does, 1000 plus 1. So what do you mean by 1? 1000 plus 1 into 4. That is 1000 plus 4. So the next location will be 1004. If you see the next line, what I have written here, 1000 plus 2. That is nothing but 1000 plus 2 into 4. That means from the starting address, go 8 locations forward. Then you will get the third element. You can see here. From 1000, go how many locations forward? 8. Because if you go 4 locations forward, you'll get the second element. If you want third element, you need to go 8 locations. That's how these calculations are actually performed by your computer. So that's why we call it as ugly pointer arithmetic. Why do we call it as ugly? Because in maths, we know adding 1 means giving 1 increment. But in computer pointers, not everywhere, just in computer address operations, adding 1 is nothing but adding 1 into the block size of that particular element. And here the block size of that particular element is 4 bytes. So this is how the calculation works. Okay. What is the confusing question what comes in your interviews or campus rounds is, see here, you know in mathematics, I need not tell a rule in mathematics, A plus B is same as B plus A. So see carefully now what I'm doing with this particular thing. I'm writing I outside and I'm writing num A inside. And I'll run this. See, I'm getting the same answer. It need not be always name outside and subscript inside or index variable inside. You can do it like this because A plus B is equal to B plus A. If you write num of 0, it's calculating num A plus 0. If you write 0 of num A, it is calculating 0 plus num A. That's one and the same. So both will give you correct answer. So this is what was your concept of arrays. How do you subscript? This is usually the question which comes in your interview rounds. They give it like this, so it's very confusing. Most of you tend to write it as an error because you would have never seen in your regular programming labs or laboratories, and you will also not experiment these things. So if you would have experimented, you will come to know. If you know the logic that it is doing in this fashion, you would have experimented. Because in maths, we know the rule, A plus B is equal to B plus A. So why always we have to write num A of I? Can't we write I of num A? It's one and the same. Fine. Okay, so this is how it is going to be calculating. Clear, right? Now I've told you what is it. Now we'll see what happens if I just give num A. What is num A? Correct. As I said, num A is actually holding your starting address. See, these are the addresses of your num A. You can see here. The starting address is this one. Why it is printing the same value? Because all the 5 times I'm printing the starting address. Now see the magic here. What I'll do is I'll just write num plus I. So what happens is initially, as I written here, num is starting address plus 0, next starting address plus 1, next starting address plus 2. Remember here, these are not your values. These are the addresses which I'm printing. Now if I run this program, first it gives the starting address. See, your computer addresses can start, it's an integer range. So if you see here, to this they have added 4. So to minus this particular number, if you add 4, it will be 64. Don't think adding 4 should increase this. It's in the negative scale. So adding 4 should decrease the place value. So that's why you can see here 68 was there. You add 4, it becomes 64. Again you add 4, it becomes 60. Again you add 4, it becomes 56. Again you add 4, it becomes 52. This particular memory is given by your operating system and it is not fixed. I'm running this at 8:33. This is the memory location given to you. If I run it once again, it need not be the same. Memory location can vary. See here. Now it has become to positive memory location. Your computer has given you a new memory location. With each run, the memory is dynamically calculated. So how it is calculated? First, you are having starting address 12. You add 4 to it, it becomes 16. You add 4 to it, it becomes 20. So how is it calculating? First, num_a plus 0. Why 0? I was 0 initially. Next, num_a plus 1. So plus 1 should actually add 1 to it, but it is adding 4 to it. You can see here clearly. Why is it adding 4? I have told you why is it adding 4. Because the size of individual memory block of the integer is 4 bytes. So this is how your computer works. So now what I have printed address. I'm not printing value. One more way of printing value is you just have to put this whole thing inside a dereferencing operator. We call that as star. A pointer operator also we can call in normal languages, or we can call it as dereferencing when it comes to values. So if I write star in front of the address, you can see the values getting printed. See 11, 2, 3, 4, 15. So there are different ways of printing the array elements. All of them will do in the same fashion. So let me write all the three and show you in the single. So let me write all the three ways. What was the first way? This one I wrote. The second way, what I'll be writing here is I of num_a. The third is what usually you have been practicing in your labs or in your programs, direct way of writing it. So these are the three ways. So all the three should print me the same answer. See, all the three are printing me the same answer. So in your campus rounds, they will never ask this. Whatever highlighted, like they will never ask this, because normally you have a habit of writing in this way. All your programming laboratories everywhere you would have written in this fashion, so everyone can answer it. But those who really know the logic of pointer arithmetic, they can actually figure out that these two things are also valid. This is valid. Why? Because a plus b is nothing but b plus a. That's what computer also performs. This is valid because inside one is actually the address. If you want to get the value of it, you need to dereference it. So that's why I'm using a special operator called star. Star is called as dereferencing operator, or it also can be referred as pointer declaration operator. So this is what was accessing your data members of an array. Very simple I have kept with respect to array. There are many operations which you can perform to find whether an element is present in an array. Those are different kinds of questions. Searching, we call it. For example, I have 5 elements. I need to be searching whether 3 is present. If it is present, I need to print in which location. So if 3 is present here, it is present in 0, 1, 2. But while printing, don't print 2, print 3, because in real life, we tell that it is in third location. But in computer science, it is present in index 2. So that's what a searching problem. Another is sorting problem. Someone gives you a sequence like this and asks you to sort. How do you sort it? So 2, 3, 4, 11, 15 should come. That's called sorting. And for each of the technique, there are n number of algorithms. For searching, there is binary search, linear search. There are different kinds of searching like this. And sorting, bubble sort, quick sort, selection sort, merge sort. There are different kinds of sorting techniques. Each one has their own algorithms for sorting. So that's how it goes on. How do you access it, and how do you manipulate these data present in your data structure? Now this is your data structure. num_a within brackets, if you write 5, it's a complete data structure which is called as array in C, or in simple language we can call sequence. And if you see here, it's been given continuous memory locations. If I would have printed the memory location, you would have come to know. How do I print the memory locations? Let me write the memory location printing here. This statement prints the memory location. So if you see the memory location, I'll run this. See, it's in sequence. What do you mean by sequence? After 80, immediately you have the next one, 76, then 72. It's adding 444 and it's present together. All the 5 elements are present together. That's how it goes. Fine. Okay, one more question what you have is, if I have individually int num9, where will be its address stored? So let me run it in another program. How do you get the address of a variable like this? For example, I have int a equal to 7. How do I get it address? I can write printf. Address is always an integer which takes 2 bytes. It's not ampersand d, percentage d, backslash n, I'll write. If I write a, it is going to give me the value. So if I run this, it should give me 7. See, it's giving me 7. If I want address, there is a special operator which we have to use. It's called as an ampersand. Run this. See, it's giving an address where your A is given. And who is giving this address? Your compiler with the help of operating system. Operating system is responsible for giving you memory location. And each time it varies. If I give run once again, it gives some other location. See, it has given some negative location. So this is how your computer works. You're just requesting your computer, give me 4 bytes. Where it has to be given, it's not in your hand. It's completely in the hands of operating system. You are just requesting, give me 4 bytes, and it's computer's job to reserve you 4 bytes in any of the memory locations. You cannot demand, I want it in the beginning, I want it in the middle, I want it in the end. It's not at all your job of demanding, and you cannot do that also. Clear, right? It has to be done by your operating system. Only thing is you can request it, I want 4 bytes and I want to store 7 in that. And this is how you can actually get the address of it. And if I've used 2 different variables, so if I see here int b is equal to 6, if I write, and instead of a, I'll print here b. If you see, I have 2 variables a and b, and both are given values 7 and 6. And if I run this, see, one is getting a place at 4, another there was a free place, so it was getting at 8. It is not necessary that both should be given continuous. Now, since your computer was having a free space, immediately it gave next to it. But it is not compulsory that always it should get continuous. It may vary. If you want it to be in continuous, then you should go for array. Now, since the places are free, it's giving you in continuous locations, but it is not compulsory that both of them will get in continuous memory location, one after the other. No, that's not a rule. Only if it is an array, it gets it in continuous memory location, as we have seen it in here. All of them are being continuous memory locations. So starting address plus 4 will give this, starting address plus 8 will give this, starting address plus 12 will give this, starting address plus 16 will give this. So this is how your array indexes are calculated. Spend little bit time in experimenting these things. What happens if I give like this? What happens if I give just num a? What is num a? What is the address? How do I manipulate it? How do I work with index? What happens? What do you mean by arithmetic? Sir said that arithmetic in pointer is different. So how it works with multiplication? I showed you with addition, how it works with multiplication. So all these things you need to be working around, because we can just give you a quick start in this 2 hours. It's a very vast topic. And I have been in touch with this programming language more than 10 years. I still feel that I just know less than 10% of C. Then think how much I have to learn. So that's how you need to give time and learn. Not even 10% I can tell which I know in C after spending more than 10 years. So vast is this programming language. But as much experience you gain, that much strength you have in coding. So we'll go to the next topic now. So what was an array is, if you see here, I'm getting 5 rooms and each of them are of same type, integer. Now if I want to, so where I can use these things is, if I want to store age of 5 people, I can store it together because all of them I can take it as integer. Now think that I want a place where I can store a complete detail of a student. Okay, what does a student have? A name, a USN number, age, and a score average score. I'll take 4 fields. Okay. So name, if I take, it is not integer, it is a character array, collection of characters. Age, I can take it as an integer. And then USN number, your roll number, USN university serial number, it's again a characters collection of alphabets and numbers. And your average, it can be a floating type. So if you see, I have a question here where I have to store a student details, and each of the parameter are of different data. One is a character array, another is an integer, another is a floating type. So how do we store these heterogeneous types? That's what is our next topic to be learning. When I tell about data structures, one more category of data structure is homogeneous and heterogeneous. Homogeneous and heterogeneous. So PRO also you can call, heterogeneous also call, or heterogeneous also you can call. Anyhow it is. Okay, so this is your different categories of. What do you mean by homogeneous? Everyone is of same type. Integer array. It's say all elements are integers. What do you mean by heterogeneous? Different types. Fine. Okay, how do we store student data then? So I need to have a special data structure. We call it as a structure. This is a keyword used. And what is it I'm using for? Storing a student data. And what and all things the student will have? A character. I'll give a name and let me reserve 25 rooms of each 1 byte for name. Let me have an integer variable age. Let me have a floating type variable average marks. Fine. This is the syntax of it. See the syntax of a structure. I've just written a structure here. What is a structure? It's also a data structure. It's also a data type. It's just used for storing data related to a student. And you know that a student data is all not integer. Name is a character. You can see here, character array. Why? Because no one has a name as A, B and all. Your name is actually, for example, Prakyat. It's collection of characters. How many are there? 9 characters are there in Prakyat. So assuming that maximum number of characters one person can have is 25. So I've reserved 25. So how many rooms will be given? Theoretically, if I'm speaking, 25 rooms. But what happens in computer science is, as I said, it's a 32-bit machine or 64-bit machine. So what happens is you will be given rooms in 4 bytes only. So total I want 25. So how much will make 25? 4 plus 4 plus 4. What is it happening? 8 plus 4, 12. Again 4. So 16 plus 4, 20 plus 4, 24. So you can see here, I want 25. But if I go on adding 4, it comes to 24. But 24 is not enough. Again, I want 1 extra. But computer cannot give you 1 extra. Minimum, it is having a room of size 4. So totally, how much it gives you here? It gives you here 28. Remember this concept. Very, very important when you go for your campus rounds. Theoretically, if I'm telling that name wants 25 characters. But your computer gives it 28. Why? Because I don't have a room of 1 byte. All my rooms of size 4 bytes. So if I have to fit 25 for it's think like that, you're going to a hotel. 25 people in your family are going to a hotel, and the hotel is having all rooms where it is having each room 4 beds. So how many rooms will you take? Don't tell that I'll take one room and someone of my extra member who is left out, he will adjust somewhere by sleeping down. No, don't take that scenario. Take it very simple. 25 persons are going and everyone wants a bed to sleep, and you have a hotel where one room is having 4 beds. So how many rooms you need to take? It is as simple. If you take 6 rooms, you will be getting 24 beds. One person is left out. So obviously you should go for taking 7 rooms. You know that there are 3 beds extra. It is okay. You cannot do anything on that. It's a wastage, right? That's what I called as internal fragmentation. In computer also the same thing is happening. You want 25, but what to do? Computer does not have a room of 1 byte. Computer has a room of 4 bytes. So minimum it has to give you 7 rooms. And you know that you require 25. So you are wasting 3 bytes. That's okay. It is called internal fragmentation. It's okay. It's not a big deal for your computer to waste 3 bytes. And because your computer size is in GB. Nowadays it's in TB, so bytes is very, very small compared to that. But remember this theoretical concept. When you're telling in your exam, character name, what is the size of it, tell 25. But when you execute in your computers and see, it is going to give you 28. Don't get confused in that point. Your industry expects you to write 28. Your campus drives, your questions will be to give you 28 only. They want to see whether you know what is actually the computer doing. And how you know computer each size is 4 bytes, it depends on the architecture. So that's why if you see your operating system, nowadays it comes in 32-bit or 64-bit. And all latest they come in 64-bit. Nowadays the 32-bit is also stopped coming. Only in your laboratories at college you see that old systems with 32 bits. You can enter your lab. However, now most of you have started going to college, so see your lab, they would have written in the specification 32-bit operating system. So in 32 and 64-bit operating system, minimum word length of a computer memory is 4 bytes. That's why 28. Now age. Age is an integer, so how much bytes? 4 bytes. Again float. Again that is also given 4 bytes. So total, how much memory I want for storing one student detail? 28 plus 4 is 32 plus 4 is 36. And how do you find the size of a particular person in computer science? For example, if I have integer a equal to 7 if I've written, and how do I find size given to a? I just have to write printf percentage d and just write a new one. I have a special operator called size of, and I just have to write a. So this particular operator size of will tell me what is the size given to my name a. And if I run this, you can see it tells 4. See, it tells 4. Now in the same way, we will see what is the size for student. Student is a data structure now. See, like int is a data structure, means a data type. The whole student is a data type now. Don't think it is a variable name. No, student is not a variable name. It's a user defined data type name. Int is a data type. A is a variable. So you have to be very careful. Most of you may say that student is a variable name. No, it's a user defined data type now. I'm a user who has defined a data type called student, which is having these many elements in it. So it is a complex data type, which is collection of primitive data types. So these are primitive. What do you mean by primitive data types? Basic. Character, int, float, double, all these are basic data types. So whenever you want a complex data structure, it should always be a collection of primitive or basic types. So now instead of a, if I write size of student, so let me comment a as I don't want a, and go for student. Okay, I need to declare a variable and then spend, since it's a data type. So let me go for declaring a variable here. Structure, so simple, I can do it here. Just write yes. This should be working for me now. See, 36. How is it giving 36? These calculations, 28 plus 4 is 32 plus 4 is 36. I've just declared a variable of that data type, user defined data type called S. If I want to direct, for example, size of, I can give instead of a, I can give int. Here, I can give int also. Most of you will, I did not explain the last error, so I'll explain you now. What was that error? Because most of you may feel that's an error. It's not an error actually. So see, your int is 4 bytes. You can either give a or you can give the data type name. What was the mistake? What I did last time was, when I am first printing, I just wrote student. Now student alone is not a data type. Struct student as a data type. So what I had to write here is struct student. I had to write. See, 36. Either I need to give integer or I need to give variable name. So listen carefully. This integer is a data type. Struct student is also a data type. A is a variable, S is a variable. There are different ways of giving variable names to a structure. This is called as a structure. One of the way what I followed is in the declaration itself, I gave the name S. One more way is I can come here and I can write struct student S. This is another way. So different ways of declaring a structure. I'm just showing you. I know it's a bit complex for those who are looking into C for the first time, but for second years, it should be quite familiar things. So 36. So there are different ways of writing a variable name. Fine. Now what I'm requesting my computer is, I want a special data structure. I want a special person called student who should be given how much rooms? Who he should be given 36 bytes of rooms. And in 36 bytes of rooms, 28 are given for name, 4 are given for age, and 4 are given for float. How do you know 28 is given for name? What you just have to do is you write s dot name. What is the meaning of dot operator is member access. So your dot, which we call it as period in your computer science, the symbol full stop, what you have in English, it's called as a period symbol in your, it's called as this. The right meaning of that particular symbol, or how do we call that symbol is period, we call. Yeah. So the dot operator, its meaning is member access. The name only says accessing a member. Now for this particular student, who are the members? Name, age, and average. And if I want name, I should write variable of student. So this is how to declare a variable of student. Int is a data type. Struct student is also a data type. A is a variable, S is a variable. So don't get confused that student is a variable. No, student along with the structure is a data type. Variable here is just S. So variable dot name. That means for particular variable S, get the member name. And what is his size? We'll see now. It should be 28 because you know that though I require 25, okay, it's giving me 25. Why? Because directly I've told him that's what is theoretically the answers. Like I want only 25 characters for my name. But when I'm giving it enough structure, total reserved place for me is 28. That you should be very careful in calculation. So because if I give 25 here, if I give other variables, it will be, show it here. Let me go for next person is age. In the same way, let me go for printing average also. AVG. Okay, if I run this, you can see 25, 4, 4 it gives. But if you add it, 25 plus 4 is 29, plus 4 is 33. It is of not available in computer science. 33 rooms are not available. It should be always in multiples of 4. That's why when I tell total rooms given for me for this particular S, it should tell me 36. This is where you need to be a little bit confusing in computer science, but you should be understanding why is it. Actually, if I add it is 33. And if you see S is having only 3 persons, name, age, and average. And individually, if you add them, it is giving wrong answer, 33. But totally 36. Why is this difference? That is because of this particular logic. Only because of this particular thing. So you have to be very, very careful with this particular thing. Clear, right? Why you are getting 28? Why? Because in your computer, though you tell 25 bytes, since each of the room is of 4 bytes, to make it 25, there should be 3 wastage there. Because 7 rooms are totally given, each of 4. So 7 4s are 28, but you require 25, 3 are wastage. But when we individually tell how much name is taking, since you have given size as 25, it should clearly be telling you that 25. But when you totally see what is the size given, it is 36. And this difference is because of this 3 bytes extra as a wastage. Okay, so this should cover the topic of your structure. Okay, now how do I give variables for the structure, values for the structure? It is a collection of 3 persons. So sequentially, first one, let me give it as name. I'm just telling it. Okay, let me give name. Next one is an age. Next one is an average. It's a floating point number. Okay, so this is how I can give values. So see what happens. S is a data variable of type struct student where the first person is name. So whatever I've written here, it goes to this particular place. If you can see here, it is only 5 characters, but I have reserved how many characters? 25, and computer is giving me 28. So 23 rooms are waste. Next 29, for which 1 byte is enough, but I requested 4 bytes because my computer basic room is 4 bytes, so 3 bytes are waste. Again, floating point. So these are wastage of spaces, and this wastage we call it as internal fragmentation. Okay, I have printed the size of it. Now let me go for printing the values of it. Same printf I can print. I'll show you in the same printf. Instead of size of, let me go for removing the size of operator. And since it is a string, let me write yes, because name is a string. Age is an integer, so I'll keep it percentage t itself. Your average is a floating type, so I'll give percentage f. So this one is your structure size. So I don't want that. So this is how you can access the members. S dot name. Since it is a string, I have given percentage yes. The format specifier is percentage yes. Yes stands for the code of string. Since it is an integer, percentage d. D is a code for integer. F is a code for real floating type. See, it is given all the three. You gave 9.7, but floating point by default it takes 6 significance after the decimal point, 6 digits after the decimal point. So that's why you have 70000 appends 5 zeros to make it 6 digits after decimal. That's a precision of floating point. If I want to restrict it to print only 1 digit, I just have to be write 0.1. See, 9.7 it prints. These are different things which you need to be experimenting and learning. I'm restricting my decimal digits to come only 1 digit after decimal. If I want 2 digits, I should be writing 0.2. See, 9.7. So this is how it comes to, fine. This is how you access actually structures. Now there is a similar type which is called as an union, fine. You need to be knowing the difference. Quickly I'll tell because it's similar data type. Instead of structure, I'll write here union. So see the difference here. Union. Let me write command these line. Union student is union I have written. This one is very important in union, the size of it. Let me comment everything. Give the size. Structure, you know the size. It adds everything and that much size is given. What is in union is which person requires maximum room, that is your total size. For example, your first person requires how many room? 25. So computer gives him 28. Second person requires how many room? 4. Third person requires how many room? 4. Which is the largest among all the three? 28 is the largest. So that's why the total size of the union is 28. So let me run this. See, 28. That's the difference between structure and union. What is the difference is which element wants maximum size? That is the total size. Now one question arises. What if 25 whole thing is consumed by name? What will be the rooms given for age and floating point? Why union is used is if you are not using all of the three simultaneously, then you can go for union. I'll show you here. See the difference of union here. I'm printing the values and I'm running. See, I gave correct answer for name. Other two I'm getting wrong answer, garbage value. Why is it happening? Why? Because what happens in union, at a time only one person can be accessed. So your whole union was only reserved for name. Your whole union was only reserved for name. So all the 25, 28 rooms what you have, everything was given for name. So if I want to use age, then down I need to be writing s dot age is equal to 29. I'll put semicolon. S dot avg is equal to 9.7. I give semicolon. Now if I run, see, correct answer. So at a time, only one person can be accessed in union. Together, all the three cannot be accessed. This line is of waste in union, because the meaning of union is it is also collection of heterogeneous types, but the difference is all the three elements cannot be simultaneously accessed. Only one element can be accessed at a time. And the memory given for a union is the largest element's size. So here there are three elements, 1, 2, and 3. And which is the largest element? This first person is the largest element. That's why 28 is the size of your union. So if you print your size of the union, it tells you 28. Experiment these things in your laboratories or at your systems at your home, because looking at them at the first time is a bit confusing. When you experiment and then when you practice it, when you literally understand what is it happening by executing different kinds of these statements, you will get a strength in it. I know I've taken a too long time till here, so I don't know what was come as a question in chat section. So I'll quickly go to the chat section. Let me know if any questions you have, since I'm looking into the chat section now. If you have any questions, I can take it up. I know chat section may be filled with sections. Okay, someone wanted to tell me the error first time what I encountered, printf. Okay, luckily I got it. The next is can memory addresses be negative? Yes, it can be negative because I am printing it in integer format, but your memory is actually in hexadecimal format. Your memory is actually in hexadecimal format. It's in hexa, but I have given percentage %d, so it used to convert and it used to give me. That's it, is the difference. Don't worry, because in real life we don't tell, right? -4 location, -5 location. It was because I was converting it to integer format, integer format, and then printing. It was not in hexa. Okay, someone has answered that it is in binary form. It's actually in hexa representation we have, and implicitly then it is converted to binary. Yeah, someone has answered it. Since it is percentage d, it has given an integer. Yes, absolutely. That's the reason. Any questions? Any other questions do you have? Any questions? I can take it quickly. I'll just have a sip of water. I'll mute myself for a minute. Okay, I'm getting one question, I guess. Negative symbol is just a representation of sign. Yes, that's it. What happens is it was in hexa. When it converted to binary, the starting bits were 1. That's why it interpreted it as minus. We have nothing to do with that particular interpretation, because it was it was me who gave it as percentage d. That's why it used to convert it to an integer. And on the process of converting it to integer, initial bits it found it in 1. That's why it calculated it in sign magnitude as negative. So don't worry about that. Don't think how a negative address can come to our memory. It's because I'm printing it in integer format, and it's a signed format, so that it calculated it as negative. Okay, any other questions I can quickly take? If not, I'll let you know about the enumerations, and then I thought I'll let you know about functions if time is available. Okay, assuming that you don't have any questions further, percentage s is for string. S is a code used for string. String is sequence of characters. String is nothing but sequence of characters. So that's a code used for printing string. Your name is a string. That's why I used percentage s. I like for integer we use d, right? In the same way. Yeah, you can use C, but you need to be writing a for loop. See, this individual, what I'm doing is I'm writing a printf. So whole this particular name VICKY is printed as a string. If I use percentage %C, right, it can print only one character. That means I need to be printing it how many times? 5 times. So if you're writing percentage %C, you need to be writing it 5 times. Can we use class in C? Okay, you're telling C++ class, you want to use it in C. No, C doesn't support. C++ syntax it doesn't support, but C++ supports C syntax. Percentage, yes, don't think it belongs to C++. It belongs to C also. But class you cannot use in C. In C++, you can use class. I think I'm telling about structure, so you're trying to relate it to class. Yeah, but the difference is class can have functions, but structure cannot have functions in it. Structure can only have data, a core data, that's it. It cannot have functions, but class can have functions to them. It's for C++, I'll not confuse it to going to that topic. Yes, I think someone was having to say something. I could hear some thing in between. So any question? Okay, okay. Yeah, fine. Okay, then that was in C++. So we'll go for the functions. We'll go for functions. That's a very important topic. Before data structures, you can actually see with functions also. I've not covered all the data structures. I know I cannot do those coverage of all the data structures in this small time, and this is a basic one. There are very interesting data structures. I can just name some of them. My favorite linked list is there. You have many like this. You have stack. So these are few data structures which are designed, user-defined data structure for your applications. There is queue, very interesting trees, you have forest. So these are different kinds of data structure designed, and it's the age of artificial intelligence and deep learning. So this is very, very handy. Tree structure. Everywhere we are going for that, reducing the data size. So knowledge graph is a concept. So all these concepts which are there in the advanced things, right? They're actually derived from these basics only. So strengthen your knowledge in this. If you're really aiming for a good company, no one will ask you questions on int, float, double, and all. Everyone's questions will be towards your hashing, stack, queue, trees, forest. How do you do that? What do you mean by forest? How do you literally code a forest in C? Can you merge two trees? How do what do you do to merge two trees? Which technique you use for merging two trees? What happens if they are AVL trees? All the different kinds of things. What happens if it's a red tree? All those things are different questions of your. As the packages increases, the question complexity also increases. If you're aiming at around less than 5 lakhs, you need not think of these questions. For example, Infosys and all, they don't go on to these kinds of questions because they'll be keeping it to very basics of your first year concept. But if you're aiming at some companies which are really into looking into developers like Amazon, SAP Labs, and all, these are the questions which comes in. So those who are in second year, you'll understand the topics. Very, very important is your linked list. How do you link the values of different locations and how do you use it? Very important. And trees. So please concentrate on that topic. So these are different kinds of data structures. Apart from what I have shown you now, those were very basic at your first year level. But when you are strong in those basics, you can go for developing the data types of user defined, these kinds of types. Okay, let me go for functions. What do you mean by a function? As you know, to do a piece of job, a function is just a procedure to do a piece of task for you. For example, consider I have a problem of adding two numbers. So how do I do it adding two numbers? What I can do is I can write, I want two numbers. So I'll be having A and B, and I'll make my A is equal to 7 and I can give my b is equal to 2. And finally, I can have another variable for storing the answer. That is also of type integer. I can keep c. So I'll write c is equal to a plus b and close it. I'll be writing enter. I want the answer, so I'll be writing percentage b plus the answer. I'll print that's enough, I guess. Answer percentage b. The answer is stored in C. Simple. It's everything is sorted out in main. You can see here everything is sorted out in main. This is one way of writing a program with no function, just a main function, fine, to do your core job. So if I run this, you will be getting answer 9. What if I want to add another two numbers again without running it once again? So what I have to do, the whole thing, what I have written here, I should put control C, I should paste it here, I'll write control V. Again, I'll change the values to 6 and I'll change the value to 6 and 2 and again I'll run. So first time answer was 9, next time your answer is 8, correct? What if I want to do this job of adding again? So what I'll do, again I should write this piece of code. Again I'll change the values of the variables, I'll make it 5 and I'll make it 2 and I'll run. So you can see here, I'm getting the answer 7. Correct. So if you see here, the same particular thing is actually being done. The same thing of writing this particular logic is done 3 times to do the job. It is a repetitive task. So another important concept comes in when we have to avoid repetition is functions. So how can I do this? By writing these 3 lines only once and let my computer do the job 3 times. Write the logic only once, but the computer should do the logic or perform the logic 3 times. How do we do it? There comes the concept of functions. The main advantage of function is to avoid repetitive tasks like loops. Clear? Okay. So function is very, very important. Now, how do I replace this whole thing now? So what I'll do here is I'll remove all of them. I'll just write here add. See, this one type of function. I've written just add, and here I'll write void add. Same lines which I wrote A, B, C. A is equal to 7. B is equal to 2. And C is equal to A plus B. Enter. Percentage D backslash N. And this is your C. Printing the answer C. So this is what we call it as a function. What do you mean by a function is it's a piece of procedure which the computer will perform. If I tell computer, it's an operating system with through compilers will perform whenever someone is calling that function. So how do you call that function? So this is a procedure for calling the function. This is called function call. What I'm doing here is I'm telling my computer perform this particular task of adding. So whenever my computer sees this line, how does the computer know that it is a function? Anything which has an open close parenthesis, it's considered as function except size of operator. Everything in computer science within the parenthesis is taken as a function except size of operator, size of operator in C language. So whenever it sees this, it searches for this particular function in your program. So if you find the same name, there is a function here, and the data type, if you see, it's not returning anything. For example, main is a function, it returns integer. But here I have written a data type called void. That means I'm not returning anything. I'm not returning anything. Clear, right? So it goes to this add, it does this all job After doing the job, it will come to the next line, but there is nothing in the next line. So I'll show you here. Printf statement 2 I'll write for our clarity. Here I'll again write printf statement 1 so that we can track the flow. So first what it does, it prints st1, then it goes to the function, it does the job here, then it comes back and again it prints st2 and the program will stop. So we'll show you here. See, first st1, I did not give a new line, that's why C is also printed. 9 is actually a C. So let me give a new line here so that it is not confusing for you. Here it is not necessary, but still go for formatting. See, st1, 9, st2. First st1, then you called add, so it will go to add, then it will again come back, it will perform st2, and then it will stop. So this is the procedure, how the flow will execute. Now, how can I make it work on different values? Now, what happens here is it's a function without any parameters. You can see I'm not sending anything. I can make it like this. I can send the values here 7 and 2. But what I'm writing here is both are integers. So let me give n1 int. I know it is a little bit too complex for those who are looking into C for first time. But these are the things how we can actually do functions, because there are second year students also. So I'm just giving a glimpse of functions. That's it. So do excuse if it's going too high for first year students. Okay, in this case, what I'm telling is my A is not 7. I'm getting it from N1 and I'm getting it from N2. So now if I run the program, same I'm getting st1, 9, st2. So what happens with this is I need not write the whole function another time to add two numbers. Instead of 7 and 2, I'll again call it, but instead of 7, I'll give it as 6 and 2 and I'll run. So if you can see here, st1, 9, 8, st2. What happened? First I called 7 and 2, it went, it performed, it came back. After that, again I'm calling it with 6 and 2. Again it will go with 6 and 2, it gives 6 to A, 2 to B, again it will perform and come back. So I can call it any number of times. Instead of writing the whole procedure 3 times, I'm just calling the procedure 3 times. This is the use of function. See, 987. These are the 3 function results. So there are different kinds of functions. I'll not get into that because it's not a time for the freshers to look into functions. It's a bit complex topic, which comes later part. So I'll stop the function concept here itself. But these are the procedures I just want to tell. These are the things which you have in your C programming language, where your main aim is to reduce the repetitive task, where you have to write a program in such a way that the normal repetitive task which you want in maths or statistics, you want to avoid it. You need to make it program automatic. So how do you avoid writing it repetitively? Those logics can be found in these constructs like functions, loops, branching, and all those things. Okay, I'll again stop here and then take a look at the functions. Okay, clear screen, could that be used? Clear screen is also a function for erasing the output console, and it works only in Turbo C. We're using it only in Turbo C. We're not using it everywhere. What happens is your previous output will be like, for example, a lecturer is taking class in the first hour. He writes something in the board. Before the second lecture comes, you need to erase it, right? So to the computer, you're telling it through clear screen that before I go to the program and do the next class, erase the previous screen. So that's what is a message, clear screen. It's a function. Okay, use of st1 and st2 just to show the flow. That's it. I just showed you that after st1 it is going to the function and coming back and printing st2. That's it. No use here. I just wanted to show the flow. So can we directly write n1 plus n2 in the function? Obviously you can write it. You don't want to give here c. Remove this line. You can directly write here a plus b. That's okay. This you can go for this also. You're telling n1, n2, you can use, yeah, you can directly give n1 and n2, no problem with this. That also you can give. Instead of a plus b, you can directly go for giving n1 and n2 also. They are just formal parameters, that's it. These 7 and 2, we call it as actual parameters. And this n1 and n2, we call it as formal parameters. Any other question I'm getting? So difference between stack and array, it's one and the same. Only thing is there is an additional constraint we give to stack. The constraint is you need to always use the stack from the top position. Just this constraint we are giving to stack, because those who are in second year, excuse me, those who are in first year, because the question is come of topic which is in second year. If you see stack also, you declare it like this only: int stack of 5. Only thing is initially you have index which is called as stock, which will be pointing in -1, but you never use the location -1. Why do we have it in -1? Because when we have to add an element, we call it as pushing into a stack. So you do first top plus plus and then you push the element. So you write stack top. This is how you actually give value to a stack. This is called push operation. You perform plus plus. First you increment the top and then you give the value to it. That's why initially your blank stack will have top equal to -1. So that's just a constraint, nothing different. Just usage of it is different. That's it. You computer wants to track, okay, who has come latest, who has come the latest. So in, for example, I want to know which is the latest person who has come to the who is to be stored in your for example, consider I am keeping a book in a pile. I just which is the latest book which will be available, it should be in the top, right? It's not like there are 100 books. The one book, if I get today, I'll keep it in the down, where I need to lift all those 99 books and keep it at the down. So what I'll do it at the top. So that's how to track those things. To track the latest incoming data, you can go for a data structure called stack. In the same way, if you want to track the sequence of it, who came first, you need to give him priority. In that case, you go for queue. So those are different kinds of data structures. Implicitly, its storage is like array only. If you see your stack also, you would have declared it as an array only. See your program of stack, you would have written in this fashion only. Only thing is you don't use index 0, 1, 2, 3. You use it through the help of a top. Initially, you would have kept your top as -1. When you're doing pushing, you do top plus plus and then add the element. When you're doing popping, you first take the element and then do top minus minus. That's what is the difference. That's it. Okay, one more is, so can we call functions from one program to another, or it should be of the, no, you can call it from one program to another. Just thing is, okay, someone has answered it. You need to import it. That's it. And if you're having that function being defined in another program, you should use a keyword called extern. There is a keyword called extern, extern. So this is a keyword which you have to be specifying if you're having the definitions in another program. And make sure you include that program name in the header file. And if you're executing it in your offline, online, however, it doesn't give us a facility of doing that always. But if you're executing in your laptops, make sure that both of these programs are saved in the same folder. Means in the same path. Your path does not change. Or else you need to be explicitly setting the path in the environment for the next import also. I'm not complicating the things. The questions are coming, so that's it. I'm answering it in the fashion. So those who are new to these concepts, you just ignore it for now. Strengthen your basics of the previous sessions which we have done. Any other questions do we have? Okay, if we don't have any other questions, as I said, my last week also concentrates on problem solving, some use cases and scenarios to solve. So we'll quickly look into few use cases. I'll give another minute more if anyone has any questions, or else I'll go to use cases where we will see whatever we have learned in these 4 sessions, especially looping things. We'll see a little bit into nesting loops and all, because last time I had a question on nesting of loops. So we'll see a little bit interesting problems on nesting loops. I've given an assignment also, so we'll see that if you don't have further questions. I know today's topic was a bit complex for those who are beginners, but for second years, it should be quite familiar one. However, any questions, I would have shared my slide and my details are there in this. You can anytime get in touch with me, and then we can learn together. Hoping there are no questions in the chat section also, and no one has any questions. We'll go for the nested loops. I'll not take much time, 15 minutes more, and then if anything is there in the assignment questions, I can take it up. Usually there are some problems which will be given like this. I want to print this pattern. We call it as pattern problems. It's good. Yeah. So see the pattern here. We call it as pattern problems. There are different names also. We'll see one by one. When someone is giving you a problem like this, so you need to be clearly looking at like how many rows are there, means how many lines are there. So if you see clearly see it as 5-line pattern starting at line number 8 till 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there are 5 lines. And if you see how many are there in each line, how many values are there? In first line 1, in second line 2, in third line 3, in fourth line 4, in fifth line 5. So there is a sequence. We call it as there is a pattern. Correct, right? There is a pattern. So how do we code these kinds of problems? So always remember the lines are called as rows. So lines are called as rows. Clear, right? This is row 1. This is your row 1. So this is your row 2. Row 2. This is your column 1. Right, C1. And then column 2 you have. The same way it goes to till column 5. So these are your columns. Fine. This whole thing is a row. The whole line from this thing is a column. Fine. So I can show you in this table, I guess. Okay. Quickly, let me add a new slide. Okay, so you have 5 rows and 5 columns. What I did is in first row, I printed a star. In the second, I printed 2 stars. In the third, I printed 3 stars. The fourth row, I printed 4 stars. In the fifth, I printed 5. Okay. This is your computer screen itself, what you're seeing, right? Your computer screen is also made of rows and columns. Your computer screen. Only difference is your whole computer screen is there, right? It is also made of rows and columns. The difference what you actually find here is, okay, this is a difference. You don't see the rows and columns. It is hidden. But implicitly, it is actually in the format of rows and columns only. It is like this. Your screen is actually made of rows and columns where each character, it is called as one cell. This is called one cell. This whole thing is there, right? Which I can call it as one cell. The whole thing is actually called as one cell. This is one cell. In one cell of your monitor screen, I can only print one character. So if you see my screen here, this whole screen, console window, black color screen, what you see, right? It's collection of rows and columns. We call it as grids in this fashion. And in each cell, you can only print one thing. The only difference what you have is this particular column row lines you will not see in computer. Those are hidden. It will not be visible to you. So it will look something like this. But you should be knowing that it is made of rows and columns. So what was the problem here was I have a 5 rows and 5 columns. You can see here. This whole thing is a column. 1 second. I'll just increase the size of the characters also so that it is clear. And let me go for distributing the columns so that it looks good. And let me go for giving the borders also so that it is easy to explain. Yeah. So this whole thing is a column. This whole thing is a row. So you should be knowing it. Fine. Okay. So in first row, only one column. In second row, 2 columns are active. In third row, 3 columns are active. In fourth row, 4 columns are active. In fifth row, 5 columns are active. So it looks in this fashion when I remove the border. See, this should be my pattern. So this is a problem. So how do I do this is one for loop should be used for tracking the rows, and that should be the outer for loop. Always remember this. Any pattern problem, whatever we have, comment it so that it does not throw an error. Your row should be outer for loop. Outer for loop, and your column should be inner for loop. Why is it so? Because my computer will come to next line after completing the jobs of first line. It will never come first, it will not print this star, then this, it will never print the column first and then come to the next column. It will always first print the whole elements of the row, then it goes to the next line. Then it goes to the next line. So what I should do in this first line, I should print all the columns, then come to the next line. So outer for loop, I need to be going for rows. Inner for loops, I need to be going for columns. So let me show now how do I write this program. So see the for loop. How many rows I want? 5 rows I want. So I'll be writing int I is equal to 0, I less than 5, I plus plus. That is for rows. If you see here, if I write a printf to print star and a backslash t, if I run this program, you can see 5 stars are printed in a single line. That's one row. You can see here. See, 5 stars are printed. Now let me write 5 lines and in each line 5 columns. So see the code here. J is equal to 0, less than 5, J plus plus. So see the mistake what we usually do in pattern problem. I have written I want 5 rows. I have written I want 5 columns and I need to be printing star. So in each row, that means in each line, 5 stars should be printed because all 5 columns I want. Totally how many stars should be printed? 25 stars should be printed because one line 5 stars. So 5 lines, 25 stars. So if I print it, you can see here, all gets printed in one line. See, all 25 stars are getting printed in one line. That's a mistake what I did. What I had to tell my computer, only print 5 stars in one line, then go to the next line and then take up the next one. So how do I specify that is, I should be writing a new line here. So this prints a square pattern. We don't want square pattern, we want triangle pattern, but let me show you square pattern first because it's the easiest way of writing, beginning with pattern. See, it prints a square pattern, 5 rows and 5 columns, and they are having stars. Now let me come to the column, where the column should be depending on the row number. If it is first row, only 1 column. If it is second row, it is 2 column. If it is third row, 3 column. So see the difference in my printing. I'm just making my J dependent on I. What is I? I is a row number. You should always remember outer one is actually tracking rows. Inner one next time. Excuse me for the noise outside. I'm just sitting outside my home for connectivity, so I can get those noise. Please ignore me on that. Okay. So outer for loop is for rows and inner for loop is for columns. I'll just wait for that noise to get cleared. I'll mute myself for a couple of minutes until the noise is clear. Okay. I hope I don't get that noise trouble again. Yeah. So what I'm doing here is my outer for loop is tracking the rows. My inner for loop is tracking the column. So first row, I want one column. Second row, I want two columns. Third row, I want three columns. So when I run this program, just say it. See, I'm getting the star pattern. That because I've made my row and my column dependent on each other. My column starts with 0 and it is always dependent on I. That means if it is a first row, it prints only once because 0 less than or equal to 0. First, it takes I equal to 0, performs this everything, then only I gets incremented. It's not that first it will do I0, J0, then I0, J1. Sorry, I1, J1, I2, J2. No, first I0, J0, I0, J1. It goes like that. For example, if I have to track it, very difficult to do it in IDE. I is equal to 0, it should finish off all the J, starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It is available. If it's available. Next, I will become 1. Again, I will become 1. I will become 1. Again, your J should start with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it goes like this. This is called tracing. Outer loop will only increment by 1 after whole inner loop finishes its execution. But it is not necessary that inner loop should be executing for all 5 times. It depends on the condition what you gave. It depends on the condition what you gave. If you see the condition what we gave now, we just made it run based on the outer for loop. So now we are getting which pattern? This pattern. The question what I gave in assignment was Pascal's triangle. So what I mean by Pascal's triangle is instead of star, you need to be going on printing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in this triangular pattern order. Fine. So how do we do that? So what we usually do for that is we need to maintain another variable called k, and we need to make it as 1. And instead of star, let me print percentage %d and then k, and I need to be making my k plus plus. This was a question. You can play with these patterns. I'm going a little bit fast to cover it in the session. So I have taken an external variable. Each time a loop is running, the key gets incremented, irrespective of inner loop or outer loop. Now when I run this program, you can see those 1, 2, 3 patterns. See 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is called a Pascal's triangle. So in the same way, there are different kinds of patterns available. So you can work on that. One of the very interesting patterns, little bit a complex thing to work on is this kind of pattern. I'll just show you here. Or diamond pattern we call. This is, sorry. This is the pattern or diamond pattern. It looks in the shape of a diamond, a rhombus, what you call. So if you clearly put the rows and columns, you will get the logic. If I put the rows and columns, you can clearly see two space, one space, again one space, two space. If you see, there is a pattern here also. First two space, then one space, one, two. So when you're coming from top to down, the space is getting reduced by one. When you're going towards the down after printing the full line, the space is getting increased. So there is a pattern with space also. So it's a very interesting pattern to solve with space. These kind of problems are the problems which sometimes comes in your campus drives. You just want to see how do you code these kinds of things. It's very interesting. And sometimes the pattern will be like this. They print one, one, two, two, one. Very interesting to solve these kinds of one, two, three, two, one. See, it's always a pattern there, which you need to find out what's the logic. So these are few interesting questions which have come in different campus drives. If you see this, one is there, then two, then three. Here, one, two. So it's always a pattern here. So you need to be finding out the logic for writing this pattern. And the largest number of that particular row depends on the row number. This is the row 1, so largest number is 1. This is row 2, so largest number is 2. This is row 3, so the largest number is 3. Again, when it comes to the next half of the diamond, it decreases. So 2, 1. So it will be 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. So if there are another line here, it would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it would have increased. The size of the diamond would have increased. So this is how the diamond pattern comes. So it doesn't look in the row column. You just have to be removing the border. Then it looks in this fashion. It looks like a diamond. So these are few kinds of problems which you encounter in your campus drives. I know in today's session, I've been a bit complex with the topics, but ignore me, those who are taking it up for the first time. I just wanted to show that these are the things or these are the use cases which you find in your campus drive so that you can prepare yourself where you're confident in writing problems or programs for any pattern. You're able to solve any pattern, any security related patterns you can have. All these things you can actually solve it with the help of these coding constructs. Any questions? I've completed with the topics. I don't want to complicate much. So any questions or any topic which you want to pick up, any question if you have or a topic which I have to do it once again, I can take up. Or any queries in the assignment questions if you have, I can take up on that also. But I've kept it very simple and then frequently asked campus questions, I have put it there. That's it in the assignment. I know learning C through an online platform is quite difficult, but hope at least a part of it I have given to you. So now you can continue to learn C and get back to me in case of any queries anytime. Volunteers, do you have anything to specify or anything which I have to take up in the session? Or any topic which you want or request you have got for any topic to be covered in this session? Since it's the last session, so I just wanted to know.
There is nothing as such, sir.
Okay.
Maybe
No
like
queries?
if
Any queries? Yeah, for someone, any question? Anything you want? Yeah, any topic you can ask. In general, also, if there is anything which you have to know about engineering, what you have to do, or with my experience, if I know the answer, I can let you know, which can give you a path to learn these things. Because
and
most of
there
you will have a doubt like, whatever we learn in engineering, do we use it in company? So obviously, it is yes. Whatever you have learned, it's a basic for doing what the company expects. So the 4 years you suffer, the next 40 years of your job you're going to be easy. And these 4 years you're enjoying, the next 40 years you have to be in trouble. So please pay attention and mainly one programming language you need to be mastering. And if you master the programming language, then Nothing. Any new language also comes in future, you can learn it in a couple of days. That's it. That's what I can tell. And C is the best one to start with.
And there are like a few juniors who wanted to know about engineering and what programming language they have to master. So, like, if
Okay.
they have anything, they can ask. Or else sir
Yeah,
can
you
guide
can
them.
ask me. If I have to tell, don't get into learning multiple languages in first year itself. Strengthen your skills in C programming language in first year and second year also. I don't want to take up, because it's not that C language you learn for 6 months, it's enough, and then you take up other languages. Nothing you can learn in 6 months of C. It requires hard hours of coding to learn C, exploring the things. It's not just the lab programs what you have in and then you learn it. There are many things which are outside your syllabus also. So first, what I would like to say is take up C till your final year. Though many other programming languages comes in between, don't leave C programming language until your final year, because that will strengthen your basics of coding. There are languages which are user friendly, for example Python, and now Scala is coming, that's also very user friendly, but those languages will not give you those basics. The main language which shows or strengthens your basics is your C programming language. So always be in touch with C till your final year. It is going to help you in your campus rounds, because most of the students who are in directly touch with Python, sometimes their basics are a little bit weak when it comes to designing new algorithms, because Python is a language which is too user friendly. It doesn't have a structure. Everything you have a package there or a module, you just have to invoke it and the whole answer comes it. Whatever C does it in 500 lines, right? Python can do it in 2 lines. That doesn't mean that Python is very good. It means that someone has done that 500 lines and you are just using it. So nothing from your head is going to that particular package. You're just using a package which is done by someone else. And sometime a question arises in your mind, can I write myself a package? Can I write myself a thing which others can use it? That time you need to have the basics, and there comes C, because all Python interpreters and compilers are written in C. So that's why I tell to first years, please concentrate on C. Just you have to be familiar with syntax, and it's the time how much you spent. And reading will never improve your programming skills. Only execution, execution, and execution. And if you're writing correct program in first attempt, it is very bad for you, because learning a program is always learning the errors in it. The more errors you encounter when you are practicing, the less number of errors or the less chances of failing you in the exam or in the interviews. Always a best programmer is one who has learned and solved more errors. So do maximum errors when you are executing or experimenting in lab. For example, if you got the answer correctly also, if there is a friend sitting in the next place in your lab, he has got an error, don't ignore it. Just go to his place and see what is the error. Because you have not got that error in lab. But in exam, if you get that error, you don't know how to solve it because it has come for first time. And many errors are there which cannot be solved by just looking into it. Runtime errors, especially second years, those who are in data structures, right? Be careful. Any error in linked list, especially coming to programs like linked list and dynamic programming, right? Where you have pointers. If your friend is having an error in his system, and if you have finished your program, correct answer you're getting, don't leave your seat. Go to that person who is having an error, sit with him, try to solve that error. The more error you solve, the more stronger you're improving, or the more stronger you're becoming in your programming. So please solve and get as many errors as possible when you're practicing. That's the only hint I can give. That's where I learned. If any error is there, right, looking it for the error, I can actually solve it now. It's not that I can write a program without error in first attempt. Not possible. In that case, I'm by halting it. I have to write a program. I should go wrong somewhere. I should understand it, correct it. How fast I correct it, that is my strength in programming. That's how you need to be learning. That's a hint what I can give to first years. And don't worry, you're a biology student, you're a stat student, you're an electronic student. Always the top scorers or the best persons are those who are from non-computer background in PU. Because in PU, what would have they done, right? They know C, they would have by hearted, or they would have somehow done that. And they don't want to learn from scratch. So now in engineering, we are teaching from scratch. So always biology students are stat students usually are stronger because they're learning it from scratch here. Because they say that constructing a new house is easier than renovating a old house. That's how it happens. Those who have learned C and C++ in PU, right? It's like they have something in their mind. They don't want to remove that and put the new things. That's where it is like renovating the old house. It is very difficult, but constructing a new house is very easy. That's where it goes. So don't have a thing in your mind saying that you are a bio student, so I will be weak in programming. Just go ahead. Program is very interesting. It's just how much time you spend there. That's it. Any particular question if you have in programming, or how do you have to proceed on it, you just let me know. And nowadays all resources are available in net to learn any topic, so need not worry on that. Search for any topic, you will get it. And how I usually learn programming languages, not learning from one place, learning the same topic from 10 places. That's how I learned. And NPTEL courses are very good. Coursera courses are very good. edX courses are very good. Take these online certifications. Kaggle data camps are there. And Google is conducting every year a program called Google Kickstart where students can participate. Complex level logics are there to be coded, but just solve the problems of previous Google Kickstart competitions. The answers are also available. Any language of your choice, the answer is available. Just take up that question and try solving so that you strengthen. If you want more challenging questions, right? Google Kickstart is a place where you can get. Kaggle data camps are the place where you can get. So these are the places where you can get. HackerRank, HackerEarth, CodeChef problems. It is giving quite a good, interesting problems. So if you in CodeChef, I think you can find the problems here. You have different questions coming in here in their homepage. All the complexity level question comes there. Learning series there, you can see here. See, different beginner, easy, medium, hard, challenge. So different kinds of questions on the programming languages are available. So you can take that. Any questions? Okay, I can see few questions. Sir, what about C++? Does it have more functions? Obviously, C++ has more functions compared to C. C++ is a superset of C. Sir, is it better to use a code editor or an actual IDE? What do you mean by that? Code editor and actual IDE? IDE is also an editor in terms. Are you speaking about online and offline? Offline is better in that case, because online it is always server based execution, so some of the functions may be limited, but offline is not like that. It's your system and your memory, so most of the runtime errors will be less in offline editors. IDE is what you call. So best is code blocks are there, NetBeans is there, Turbo C. It's difficult to handle Turbo C because mouse does not work sometimes and all, but it is the best place to learn C. Other modern IDEs, if you want, you have Visual Code, and then you have code blocks, NetBeans. All are free, open source, easily downloadable. Any other question? If not, I can wind up. I think it's time to wind up. Hope these 4 weeks of course was quite a bit enough to start kickstart to learn C language. I know it's very small time to give you a glimpse of C, but hope I've covered the basics. Anything is there, you just let me know. Over to the volunteers if they have anything to specify, or I can stop the session.
Yes, sir. I guess this is the end of the session.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, sir, for giving your time and teaching us. I'm sure it helped a lot to kickstart with C because most of them are first years, and because of these online classes, they're not getting to learn better going to college. So I'm sure this helped them a lot. And you have been a part of SOSC faculty as a faculty coordinator. You helped us, and even after shifting your profession, you're being a part of the open source community, and I'm very thankful for that. And if anyone have any questions, you can put a message in the group. We'll try to contact him, and if you want him to repeat a session or anything, I hope Sir will spend a little more time in helping
Yeah,
us.
sure. I would love to spend time on learning. It's a learning for me also, teaching to those who
Yes, sir.
need.
Thanks a lot.
And then any feedback on how the session was, if I had to improve anything, if I have to reduce my pace, if it was on too high level, anything is there of that kind, you can give it to me so that I can improve it when I'm taking it to other set of students in future. Please free to give your genuine feedback. And then thank you for this opportunity. So see you maybe in the upcoming webinars if required. Thank you.
Yes, sir. If there's any upcoming event, we'll inform you. And if we'll collect the feedback and forward it to you, sir.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
And